Thank you for joining us on Healthcare All-Stars, powered by Bed Beacon. We service a tremendous industry that helps a lot of people with their healthcare problems. We work with public health and with research and with development of the labor force for healthcare, and a number of issues that are just really important in healthcare are shaping up right now. And so we like to bring on special guests who are experts in healthcare and definitely all-stars to help us understand all of these issues. And today we have a special guest, Mark Hayes, who joins us from DCCD. He's the Vice Chancellor of Economic Development there, and has several graduate degrees. You have a graduate degree from Harvard, and
well, I have some certifications from Harvard, and
right.
Most of my master's degree is from University of Oklahoma, and then also some undergrad work. My undergraduate degree from Oklahoma State. So you
yeah, and you have 25 years of labor force work and are just truly an expert in developing labor forces, training the next generation, actually a few generations now, right?
Yeah, it's been a few generations, that's for sure. The people that you sent to school at a young age come back now with their kids and say, help my child get into the labor force, and you're going, oh my gosh, time flies when you're having fun, I guess. So.
Well, that's incredible. So you just have a wealth of knowledge about the labor force. Tell me how you got into that first.
Well, it was interesting because I started working many years ago. I was in the broadcast media, and we kind of moved away from that into job training areas, and so I started working with dislocated workers, and these are individuals who were laid off due to no fault of their own. Got back into this in the 80s, and about the time when the oil bust was hitting, and so you had workers who were making great money and all of a sudden were out of work, but had a very specific skill set. And so what they needed to do was to learn how to do new things in order to make a living. And so my job was, we used federal funding to get them back into school, get them retrained into new career areas so they could begin a new life, basically. So it was very gratifying to do that kind of work, because you dealt with adults that had worked hard all their life, were responsible adults, and then circumstances just hit to where they no longer had a job. So helping them get back into the labor force, helping their families, was something that really stuck with me. And so in some form or fashion, I've been doing that kind of thing for a long time. Got involved with the Dallas County Community College District several years ago as their Vice Chancellor of Workforce and Economic Development to help our colleges, help employers, help students really focus on earning wages that could get them above middle class, for example. And so we have so many issues in Dallas specifically where we have people who are underemployed that can't make the kind of living they need to make in order to survive in this economy. And we have a great economy in Dallas. The problem is we have so many people who can't take advantage of it because they don't have the skills necessary. And so what I want to do is to help them get those skills, so they can earn those middle class wages and support their families and help make our community better. So it's it's not that difficult. It's just getting people in the position where they can make a good living for themselves and their family.
Well, you're definitely making it look easy, but I know that there's a lot of groundwork that goes into it. So you've coordinated with a large number of groups. From what I understand, the American Hospital Association, the hospitals in the Dallas medical community, and then hospitals nationally as well. So making a big splash. How are you making those connections and making that happen?
Well, it started, of course, in the community college system. We've had allied healthcare training programs for a long time in different areas, and so it's a very demanding areas. But the problem is that there hasn't been the capacity to really grow those programs like we would like to. And you have situations of where people maybe can't go and get a degree, for example, and take that kind of time out to go and get a degree while they're trying to support their family at the same time. So we look at different areas. We have many industry certification type programs that don't require a degree. But we looked at so what's different? Because ever since I remember as a kid, I've always talked about that I've heard that healthcare employers saying we can't find people.
Right.
And that it just seems like a never-ending thing. And so we're looking at ways, what can we do differently? What can we do to help employers do things differently? So we look at apprenticeship programs. And so we applied for recently a Department of Labor a sector skill grant for healthcare apprenticeships. And so we were fortunate enough to get it in a $12 million grant that we received from the Department of Labor. And we, in the process of developing this grant, we're thinking, what can we do to provide healthcare apprenticeships for individuals to get them into the labor force? And so apprenticeships are a different world. And a lot of employers were hesitant because they think, oh my gosh, it involves a lot of paperwork, it involves a lot of hassle. We have a team that helps employers get that paperwork done and helps them guide them through the process. It's not that big of a hassle. They're registered apprenticeship programs that we have. And so we looked at the healthcare industry and said, how can we develop apprenticeships for the healthcare industry?
Wow.
And it's not a new concept for the healthcare industry because residency programs, for example, are apprenticeships. That they've been around since the beginning of time almost. So
I've been through an apprenticeship program.
Exactly. So how can we get that in areas like for patient care technicians, for nurses, for respiratory therapists, all different kinds of occupations. So in the grant, we wrote in 55 different healthcare occupations. Wow. And they're not all clinical occupations. There are also non-clinical occupations like the IT part of healthcare, the construction part of healthcare, the management side of healthcare that don't involve direct patient care. So we talked with the major healthcare systems here in Dallas-Fort Worth. They gave us their input on what kind of occupations they needed, and boy, was it a lot of them. And in this grant, we said that we will train 7,500 apprentices in 4 years. Most of those are local, but we also have to scale this thing nationally. And that's where we brought in the American Hospital Association as a key partner to help us scale this thing nationally. And they will be involved in developing new and revolutionary apprenticeships all across the nation. And our team here in Dallas, we focus on kind of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but we all work together in this grant to make it successful.
That's fantastic. So you're finding synergies. You're really greasing the wheels to make sure that employers are taken care of and get the workers they need so that they can address this growing kind of healthcare demand. So what do you see as far as the needs in the future? Because you talked to me earlier about forecasting for the needs of the future.
Yeah, and healthcare is a slam dunk. When we have at the Dallas County Community College District what we call a labor market intelligence center. And it involves looking at labor market trends, forecasting where those things are going, because it was initially set up to help our colleges determine what programs of study they needed to have to meet the growing labor market needs. What programs need to be cut back, for example. That's part of it as well. And then focusing resources on areas that were growing and that really needed to meet that labor market need in Dallas. So we use very sophisticated programs to look at where these things are headed. And of course, healthcare, it's just, you look at the growth opportunities the next 5 years, the next 10 years, simply off the charts. And so it's very worrisome as well, because if you don't fill those positions, I'm getting to the age where healthcare is becoming more and more important for me. But the thing is, if there's no one there to handle the jobs, if there's no one there to fill the jobs, then we're all going to suffer. So we have to get the word out. We have to match individuals with those jobs. And so that's what we do. We help forecast that so people can look and say, hey, this is an area I'd like to go into because the demand's going to be there. The hospitals will sit around and tell you we need these occupations, and there's scores of them that we can't find people for them.
Wow.
And so our job is to try to connect those individuals with the training that gets them those jobs. And through these grants and other programs that we have, that's the process that we hope to go through to get that done.
Okay, and you already have experience with apprenticeship programs. From what I understand, DCCD has already implemented some apprenticeship programs.
We're involved with about 30 different apprenticeship programs with about 2,000 apprentices right now. Anything from traditional apprentices that you would think of, like in construction and manufacturing and those sort of occupations, to even sophisticated IT occupations. For example, with Amazon Web Services and with finance and different areas. Truck driving, for example, we have a huge apprenticeship program in that. It's simply a way. It's another tool that we want to have in our toolbox for employers. So you go to employers and you say, well, we have the credit programs, we have non-credit programs, And I call apprenticeships kind of the third leg of the bar stool. That, the apprenticeships are an area that, as a community college system, we really have to up our game, and not just in Dallas, but all over the country, as providing different alternatives for employers and for workers to get into the labor force. It's not necessarily all about a 4-year degree. It's not necessarily all about a 2-year degree or a graduate degree. I'm not here. We hear the saying all the time that, not everyone needs college. And I don't agree with that. Not everyone needs 4 years of college, but everyone needs a post-secondary credential, needs post-secondary training in some form or fashion. And that's what we're there to do, to try to help employers get the workforce they need, help workers get the jobs that get them into the middle class and beyond, and help our community thrive.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about what an apprenticeship is. From what I understand, workers work and are paid while they're also learning. Yes.
In a traditional, what we call a registered apprenticeship program, there's a part of it that's called we call it the RTI. That's the related technical instruction. That's the classroom training part of it. In other words, this individual has to have a certain amount of classroom training time. Then the other part of the apprenticeship is the OJL, the on-the-job learning, where they are on the job and we used to call them journeymen, but now they're called mentors.
Okay.
And so the apprentice has to meet a certain set of competencies. In other words, before they can move on in the apprenticeship program, they have to meet a competency before they can advance in the program. And so the mentor says, yes, they've met that competency. They can do that task. The same thing in the classroom. They have to pass the classroom work. Now, who provides that classroom training? Well, it can be the community college. It can be what we call a third-party vendor, someone that if we can't teach the course, we go to a third-party vendor to teach the course. Or it can be the employer themselves. The employer themselves can teach that related technical instruction. The key is the apprentice gets paid, both in the classroom and on the job. One of the things we run into a lot is employers will say, well, I'm not paying them while they're sitting in the classroom. Well, as an apprentice, they are your employee. Right. They first and foremost, they're your employee. So they earn wages while they're in the classroom. They earn wages while they're on the job. But what we found is that it really builds retention. So it's not just as an employer anymore. It's not just about recruiting people. It's how are you keeping them?
Yeah.
Because there's just not enough people out there to fill all these jobs. And so the population's getting older. And so what are we doing to help employees stay in those jobs, to help employers keep those employees? The data shows that apprentices stay on the job with that employer much longer than if they just walked in off the street and started to work. It is a great retention tool because the apprentice understands that employer is putting money into my education. We help employers all the time build that career pathway. It's not just the apprenticeship. It can be, a college degree beyond that if the employer wants to help them with that. It's helping that employee advance on the job. A happy employee is going to stay with that employer, and building that labor force that you need and keeping that labor force that you need is going to be critical if you're going to survive as a business.
So it sounds to me like you help the businesses in several ways.
Absolutely.
Number one, finding the right people, because you're attracting them in with a great training course where they can graduate without debt.
Yes, right? Absolutely.
And get the skills they need to retool so they can move in from a different industry. So you're drawing more people in. That probably decreases the recruitment expenses of the employers dramatically. But then it sounds to me like if they can retain their employees, they reduce their recruitment expenses again another time.
Right. Absolutely. I've seen the American Management Association puts data out that says when you lose an employee, it costs you $8,000 minimum. And so, it's amazing the number of employers we talk to, and I'll say, well, how do you recruit? And they say, well, we steal people from our competitors. And so,
which means every competitor now lost $8,000.
Yeah, and so, but then they can do the same thing to you.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things. It's not how do we fight. I equate it to fighting over the last piece of pie at Thanksgiving. It's not. It's not about fighting over that piece of pie. What can we do as a community college system, as a community, as employers, to make the pie bigger? That's what we all need to be striving for, is to make the pie bigger so that we have the labor force we need. Because if we can't fill these jobs, Dallas is going to suffer, the rest of the country is going to suffer, because capital will go to where capital can thrive.
Yeah.
And that's going to be where the labor force is. That's why we've seen this tremendous growth in the North Texas region over the last few years, is because the perception is there that this is where the labor force is. There's 350 people a day moving into the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so they're coming because this is where the jobs are. But the problem is that we're starting to see these shortages crop up of where employers simply can't find the labor force they need. And that costs all of us money because they can't do business. That money's not circulating in our economy. And so that business goes somewhere else.
So you're giving them the infrastructure for massive growth too.
Well, absolutely. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. You have to, and most companies will tell you the biggest issues they face are labor.
Yeah.
They can't find the workers they need. And so we want to help with that. And we want to help get that workforce trained so that not only are they thriving as a company, but their workforce is thriving as well. And you know, the president of the Dallas Fed, Mr. Robert Kaplan, says there's only two ways to grow an economy. You increase the size of the workforce and or you increase the productivity of your current workforce. It's the only way. And so we've got to look at how we can help employers do that and help people get jobs that keep them in living wage situations.
Sure. So you've talked about increasing the size of the workforce. You're training them with specialized skills. So I would think that you would also make the workforce more tailored toward the job than finding another applicant out of a competitive pool.
Oh, absolutely. Community colleges and higher education in general, and I will dog on higher education all day long because I'm a part of it. But all too often what we've seen is that we would walk into an employer and say, here's our course catalog, take it or leave it. And all too often employers now are saying, well, we'll leave it. I mean, we'll find something else. And so we have to be more responsive to employer needs. It's absolutely critical. If we're not, then shame on us. Because now, it involves, we have to go in and sit down with an employer and tell us what it is you need. And if the employer says, I need these competencies, these skills, then my job is, even if our colleges don't offer that, my job is to find it. Is to find whether that's through a third-party vendor, maybe it's another college somewhere else. I don't know. I just want to meet the employer needs and get people trained and get them to work. That's what I want to do. And so how can I do that? How can I help people meet their labor force needs and help them find the workers that they need? But it also has to be on their terms. In Dallas, we're supported as a community college system overwhelmingly by ad valorem tax, by property taxes, and most of that is paid by businesses. So businesses are our customer.
Sure.
And we have to look at them as customers, and we don't want to lose customers. We can't afford to. Even though we're publicly funded, we can't afford to lose customers. And so how can I help meet that business's needs?
Sure. So we've talked about apprenticeship programs, and we've talked about the big employers, the hospitals who you're helping. Right. But from what I understand, you also have some programs to help small employers develop their workforce.
Well, absolutely. One of my areas of responsibility is our small business efforts. Here in Dallas, we at the Dallas County Community College District, we're the headquarters for the North Texas region for the Small Business Development Centers. It covers 49 counties in this part of the state. And these are individuals who can help individuals, for example, come in and say, I need help with a business plan. I need help finding financing for my business. Help me with marketing issues. Sure. and that sort of thing. So we have that. We also have what's called the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses Program. These are companies who have established themselves, but they need to grow to that next level. How do we grow companies to that $50 million in sales level? And so it's a very competitive process to get into the program, but it's been wildly successful. In Dallas, probably one of the most successful locations for this program anywhere else in the country. It's just been tremendous, and we've recently looked at how we can connect the participants in these, in what we call these cohorts, how they can connect with each other. And it's amazing what they can do when they come together and they start talking with each other and they do kind of joint business ventures together.
Sure.
So they're helping each other along the way as well. So yeah, a lot of small business activity there. We do focus groups of small businesses all the time, asking them what their needs are. We've recently passed in Dallas, part of the Dallas County Community College District, a $1.1 billion bond issue. And part of that's going to be building an innovation hub in downtown Dallas that will focus on small business and entrepreneurs and developing and growing them. Great partnerships already coming together for that, and we can't wait for that to happen.
Sure. So it sounds like you have your hand in really bringing together collaboration among businesses, but also growing the individual employees of businesses existing and also bringing in labor force.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's we can't be all things for all people, but we feel that we have a very special responsibility as part of this community college system. It's the largest in the state of Texas, one of the largest in the country. We feel that we are such an economic force, and we do that with public funds, and so we have to grow our economy, help our residents, help our businesses, and help this community grow. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. So you're a great mentor to our community. Who was your great mentor? There's been so many. Whenever I think I've had a rough day or something, I look back at, for example, my grandparents, and my grandparents. My great grandfather on my father's side was a barber that was trained by the Army in World War I, and worked till he was 87 years old. And then my mother's father was worked in pipeline industry. And worked hard every day of his life and died, unfortunately way too young. But then my own parents, showed me what it was like every day to get up and go to work, and how rewarding that was. Even though as a teenager, you don't think so sometimes, but it was, I always looked at them and then many people in my professional career that helped me out and gave me a hand up in so many different areas. And our Chancellor, Dr. Joe May, is just an absolute delight to work for. He is a leader in higher education. He gets it. Yeah. He looks at workforce programs and how we can help advance our workforce and advance our community. He's not the typical higher ed bureaucrat or anything of the sort. He is focused on helping this community grow and thrive. Well, and I think you've really gained the respect of your peers. When I talk to the Council for Community Colleges, Mark Fincher, for example, just sings your praises and talks about how DCCD is really making a big difference in this community and nationally. So I can't thank you enough for all of the contributions you're making to healthcare and also to all of us. It's just incredible.
Well, we appreciate it. Healthcare is 20% of our economy here in Dallas. 20% of our workforce is in healthcare. And if we don't get this right, Dallas will not thrive. North Texas will not thrive.
Yeah.
We have to get this right, and we have to give employers, the healthcare employers, the workers they need. We need to help these workers gain the skills so that they can make great livings for themselves and their families. And it's not just in healthcare, but in all industries. But healthcare in particular, if you don't have healthcare, you don't have anything else. And because businesses aren't going to locate anywhere where the healthcare is subpar or substandard. And so we've got to get it right.
Absolutely. So when you were young, what did you want to do? Did you forecast this? Talk about jobs and...
No, I had, and I was like a lot of kids. I was raised on a farm, and it was helped raise cattle and everything. And at the time, you can't wait to get away from it. And then times you look back and think, oh man, I'd like to get back to it, because that was it was in some ways a lot simpler life, but it was a hard life. But I was always fascinated with agriculture and loved agriculture, and still do for that matter. I did broadcasts of farm and ranch news on radio and TV for many, many years. And I can even tell people what a pork belly is, and and futures markets and things like that always interested me and fascinated me. But I mean, it's I look back on that and it's amazing how things turn out sometimes. I mean, everyone has their own story about how they're probably not doing now what they intended to do at a young age. A few exceptions, but most everybody kind of drifts to something differently, and I think we kind of find our way.
So you help people find their way.
I like to think, I tried to explain to my child when he was very young, my son, because he had at school, third or fourth grade, what do your parents do?
Yeah.
And so he asked me, and so at the time I was working in very complicated federal job training programs, and he kind of hit me with it, and I was trying to explain it to him. I said, okay, how can he explain this to his class? And he says, "Oh, Dad," he says, "I know." He said, "You help people get jobs." And I said, "Yeah, that pretty well boils it down." And so that's pretty cool, I thought. And I said, out of the mouths of babes, comes the wisdom. So,
right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really are impressed by how much of an all-star you are. In fact, we had a star named after you.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
How cool.
It's in a constellation. Here's your star.
Oh my gosh. Oh gosh. Now that's a surprise. That is really cool.
And it's in a constellation that is named after somebody who is a slayer of serpents. So the medical Medusa comes from getting parasites out using a stick and getting the serpents out.
Well, that's incredible. I'm flattered. Thank you very much. I'm just floored by that. Thank you very much.
Well, we're just incredibly grateful for everything you're doing for healthcare.
Well, I appreciate it, and it's an honor to go to work every day, and it's an honor to serve the people of Dallas and North Texas.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.